Greetings, shipmates. Welcome to this edition of Voyage of Rediscovery, a commemoration of the fall 1998 journey on Semester at Sea. Before we jump in, or shall I say dive in, a reminder that you can follow our voyage, access other conversations, check out all participant bios, learn about and contribute to the fall 1998 commemorative scholarship, as well as order swag from sas25th.com, and that's SAS25th.com. Dolphins, portside! All right, excuse me. Let's start the show. In today's episode, we speak with Michael Rubinstein. Mike attended Bucknell University and was born in Chappaqua, New York. For Mike, Semester at Sea was a way to get off of campus in central Pennsylvania and a real challenge for himself and his comfort level at the time. He'll also share a story about an overnight in India, one that still affects him to this day. Hop on board, everyone. The ship is leaving. So traveling back in your mind, how did you hear about Semester at Sea and what inspired you to go?
I can't put my finger on exactly how I heard about it. I definitely remember seeing flyers for Semester at Sea up in the, like the study abroad office at Bucknell. Obviously, these were in the infancy of the internet. So I don't think it was anything on the internet. I think it was literally flyers on the wall. And I think I heard that somebody who was a year ahead of me, who I knew to be an awesome and interesting guy, was currently on it when I was a sophomore. He was a junior. And it just sounded like a dream to be able to visit all these countries. I was feeling very confined at Bucknell. It was a very, what you might imagine central Pennsylvania to be like at that point in the late 90s. It wasn't a terribly diverse school as far as race, religion, economic status. I mean, there was some diversity, but I was really just kind of desperate to flee that campus and do something really crazy as far as I was concerned, especially because I had dealt with plenty of homesickness when I was younger. So at that point, I was like really ready to challenge myself and thought, there's nothing that I can do more to challenge myself than getting on a big old cruise ship, which I'd never been on. I mean, I'd been on like a little motorboat for an hour or two in my life, but nothing like this. And to sail around the world for 100 days sounded like the best challenge ever. So that was kind of the jumping off point.
Amazing. When you decided to go, obviously there's this adventure outlined ahead of you and you're looking forward to it. Was there a specific country or destination that you were more looking forward to than others?
All of them, I would say probably I was less interested in some like Italy that I thought were, going to be more like what I was used to living in America. At that point, I was an anthropology major, and I was really interested and fascinated by cultures everywhere, but especially cultures from countries that felt incredibly foreign to me, or people whose lives couldn't be more different from my own. So I guess that's what I was really excited for. Places like India, Vietnam, countries that at that point people were referring to as developing countries. I kind of had this vision in my head of sort of experiencing traditional cultures. I feel like I had a lot of preconceived notions about what each of these places would be like, and what I realized in retrospect, I guess I kind of had this vision that, in order to experience these places in their truest sense, I had to have a certain kind of experience. And later on, during the journey, I realized that that was not the case. And I've been learning that ever since, that, all these places are so complex. There's not one, these cultures are not static, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at, I guess.
Yeah, no, I understand it. Absolutely. They're definitely not monolithic, and there isn't a single way that you go about them. So I've had conversations with others, and the first port when we got to Japan put a lot of preconceived notions, I suppose, into question, or it was the most shocking because people had anticipated they'd get off the ship and maybe folks would be able to converse with them. And instead, it was diametrically different than what the day to day was like in the States. Was that your experience in Japan, or did you have that kind of experience somewhere where you arrived, maybe you thought it was going to be a particular way, and it was completely different than what you anticipated?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's exactly what I experienced in Japan. And you're right. I think, I mean, you'd always heard about the crazy technology that was so common there. And I guess I definitely anticipated that more people would speak English. But I remember specifically, I don't know if it was in a train station or where, but I mean, there was no signage in English whatsoever. I remember being shocked at that and feeling, excited by that, but also definitely some trepidation. And, I remember that first night off the ship, it was dark and I feel like it was raining. I was with one other guy from the ship, and we found some small inn or motel or hotel, and again, nobody there spoke English, and just trying to communicate. Again, it was exciting and thrilling, and also definitely just eye-opening.
One of the themes that I've heard, we talk a bit about technology, and I don't necessarily want to force the issue around technology, but the absence of it at that point in time. When you encounter one of these cultures where it is so unfamiliar and you don't have the language, it does sometimes lend itself to something magical, in that it's almost miraculous that you made it back to the ship, given the fact that you're like somewhere in the world and could speak to no one, yet you found your way back to the way out.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. And as you were saying that, I was realizing that if I were in that situation now, I would instantly open my phone and look to Google Translate or something. And I know actually specifically in Japan, a lot of that has changed too. And now there is plenty of signage in English, but you are absolutely right. It was definitely magical and otherworldly to come to those understandings with people through body language and plenty of smiles and gestures to help figure out what what each of you were trying to say. It was an awesome time, and I'm so glad that we got to experience that before phones.
For technology ruined everything. I mean, yeah, no, no, I appreciate that within the historical context for sure. So, were there any standout moments for you, memories, destinations that were just more special than others?
So I think one of the most memorable for me was in India. I was definitely nervous to do everywhere. I was nervous to kind of travel on my own, so I signed up for a lot of the specific excursions that Semester at Sea offered. And one of them that they offered in India was an overnight to a Dalit village, which I think formerly, Dalit people were referred to as like the lowest caste or the untouchable caste in India. And it was just an incredible experience. I feel like we took a bus from Chennai. There was a really fantastic Dalit woman who was kind of leading this excursion, and she was singing songs that were songs of activism and civil rights type songs related to the Dalit community. And we got there late in the day, and people was just this absolutely overwhelming and incredible experience, having this basically a village kind of welcome all of us with drums and music. It felt like the entire village was out to greet this group of young university students who really didn't know what they were getting themselves into or why they were there. And they just treated us with such kindness and generosity. We slept in a schoolhouse, and I remember, I guess, Semester at Sea had provided, or maybe the village provided, some boxed meals for dinner. And the whole schoolhouse was surrounded by members of the community who were just staring in through the windows, watching us eat. And I remember just, feeling like I am so far from home. And I wish that I could, really get to know these people for more than just this one night. But even that one day and night alone was just incredible, walking around the village and meeting people and being invited into their homes and learning about the struggle that these Dalit people have faced for generations and continue to face. So that was definitely an incredible highlight.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it really touched you. Without putting you on the spot, do you think that that moment in and of itself, or that experience, shaped any of your actions, activities, things you focused on moving forward?
I remember looking back on those 24 hours regularly for years. And I hadn't thought about it in a long time until you asked that question. It definitely was a life-changing event. I don't know that I can point to anything concrete that I would say resulted from that experience. But I mean, I can still, 25 years later, I can clearly see the people's faces. I mean, I remember specific people and, moments, holding the hand of some guy who was probably about our age as he led me around the village. I mean, it's crazy that just one, it was probably less than 24 hours, but I can, really clearly recall specific people and how I felt in that moment. And, definitely a desire to, I don't want to say, I don't want to give myself more credit than I deserve, but, it definitely made me hyper conscious and aware of human rights abuses and civil rights abuses. I was interested in that, and I'd always been interested in learning about that, but it really was the first time that sort of thing was like up close and personal. And but I'm unfortunately, I can't say that I've become like a civil rights attorney or anything as a result of that.
No, that's okay.
Although at one point that was on my to-do list.
Okay, well, there's still time, but
Yes.
I understand, and I certainly appreciate it. And I think we all take from these experiences, and it's very difficult to be someone that changes the world as a whole. But obviously, if you can take from that experience, draw from that, and impact the individual interactions you have, then that's how we can all make a difference. Rah rah. Okay. Let me ask, do you have any regrets? Were there things that you wish you had done, opportunities you didn't seize that, for whatever reason you didn't?
Yeah, I guess there are two things. I definitely would have traveled independently more now, although I feel like that's also easier to say now. I was just nervous to do it at that point. But I think I remember hearing about some of our fellow shipmates who did that. I remember there was one guy in particular who I think did that in almost every country, and just hearing some of his stories traveling far and wide, completely alone in some of these places was inspiring. So I think that would be one thing that I kind of wished I had done. I didn't do that until Morocco
I
final.
thought you're gonna say Miami, which would have been a little too late. But
Right.
yeah, that was tail end
Yeah.
there.
I decided to like really again kind of challenge myself and do that in Morocco. And it was incredible. Although I also feel like I was very lucky for it not to go horribly wrong, because I took some very big risks in doing that. But the other thing that I would say,
Oh, no,
I
no, 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 no. Go back to go back to the risks. This is the juice, the meat. This is what I want.
so you want me to go into that?
Yeah,
So
yeah, sure. Share
so
what you're willing to.
at that point was like really, I was, everybody was talking about like the hash in Morocco and everything. And so I was like, all right, well, let's see what I can like get into and what I can find. So I think I was in Marrakesh, and I was just kind of wandering around aimlessly, and some overly friendly guy was like, oh, struck up conversation, and I was like, yeah, he seems cool. And
He
so
seems trustworthy.
yeah, exactly. So I just kind of trusted my instincts, and just kind of walk around hanging out, got some food, and he's like, why don't you come back to my house, and we can hang out with some of my friends. And so it was in the Medina, and it was dark, and I didn't know where I was, or I completely lost track of how to find my way back to where I was staying. And I was definitely very scared. There was like a scene out of a movie, like there are dogs barking, and like shadowy figures in the Medina. And he takes me up like this stairwell into like one of these Medina houses, and there are like kids crying, and there's a woman who seems to be related to him, and he's like, we're gonna have some tea. And then some other guys came over, and anyway, the magical hash appeared, and it was a lot of fun, and they were all speaking in Arabic. But I remember at one point, they were just, I didn't know what was going on. It was like 5 or 10 minutes, I assume, and they were speaking in Arabic. And he said, don't worry, we're not talking about how to kill the American. And I was like, oh, that makes me feel much better. And I remember the only thing that made me feel slightly comforted was this woman who kept coming out and like refilling the tea. And I was like, okay, there's a kid over there, and there's a woman over there. Like, it's not just me and these dudes. So anyway, I said, I think I gotta head back. And he walked me, he showed me to, how to get back to the hotel. And that was it. That was it. Yeah. So I remember getting back to the hotel and thinking, that was awesome, but I can't believe that I'm back in my hotel room, and it all worked out. So
Yeah, that's just incredible. I've heard, and I experienced those kinds of things too. What's interesting to me is obviously as a younger person, your level of risk tolerance is higher, and your willingness to deal with uncertainty can also be higher. But what I think is really amazing about that is that you did take that chance, because you were talking earlier about wanting to get away, wanting to experience, but having homesickness, having a desire to be around other people or have scheduled events. And you finally broke out of that mold, and you did something completely dangerous, might be overstating it, but going into something where you didn't know your way visually and you didn't know the language, and yet it all worked out for you.
yeah. Yep. Definitely wouldn't do that today. You're right. My risk tolerance was definitely higher, despite the anxiety and homesickness concerns. But yeah, it was awesome.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, so I want to ask you, I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon, but I wanted to ask you about being a parent and looking back on your experience, like what are your thoughts on whether it's semester at sea or whether it's this type of thing, but how do you think about the impact this has had on you when you consider having children and the kind of experience you want to have them have in their formative years?
I would love for them to experience what I experienced and more. I definitely understand now why my mom in particular seemed worried about me going, although she really, I realized that she really kept a lot of that in check, and she was much more excited for me than she seemed to be worried. And I worry about my daughters every day going out into the world. But that said, I think there are a lot of places on this earth that I would be less worried for them to be in and experiencing than life here in America. Semester at sea was transformational, and I would love for them to experience studying abroad, whether it's semester at sea or really anywhere. I think it's just vital for people to step outside of their, what they know and what they see as the norms, and experience how other people live. So I would love that.
Yeah. You and I share a unique connection, unlike others that I have with this project, in that after semester at sea, we actually, I was thinking about it earlier today, and I don't remember how it happened, whether we ran into each other on the street or on a train or something. Somehow we connected in New York, and we wound up working together at basically a deluxe tour operator working in lower Manhattan and taking people to different parts of the world. That was truly a remarkable coincidence to me.
It was. And I can't remember. I feel like you were literally walking out of the office to lunch as I was walking in for my interview. Part of me feels like I saw you as I was already in the office and you were at your desk, but I feel like you were walking out to lunch with Mona as I was walking in, and we were like, oh, or maybe it was like on the elevator. It was something crazy like that. But yeah, that was my first job out of school, and I was thrilled to see you. Definitely made my interview a whole lot easier, and I'm sure it's in large part why I got the job, because you could vouch for me. And yeah, it was awesome. It was a blast to work with you. That was a great experience.
Truly was. It really, truly was. I was so delighted. And I can't think of too many other referrals or endorsements that I could have given in a professional setting that I was more excited about than for you. Also at a place where we brought the level of casual attire down to flip-flops and t-shirts. So, but I wanted to segue to that because really there have been a few moments in my life that I think have been, just really pivotal, things that you just never forget. And we had 100 days of that, and some of those 100 days are more clear than others. But I mentioned this job not only because in some ways I think it carried on the spirit of adventure that we had, of then vicariously living through clients who traveled to different places in a far more fancy way than we did, but we still got to see it in a pretty privileged manner. Nevertheless, September 11th, 2001, we were both working together at this office, which was in Lower Manhattan with a southward facing view of the World Trade Center. And so I feel like you are indelibly marked or connected to me, and I to you, in not only semester at sea, but in that momentous day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you describing that takes me immediately right back there. And unfortunately can remember every moment of that entire day. That obviously just had a global impact, and on that day had a global impact. And I feel like we're still dealing with the consequences of that day as a country. I did, when I was just this morning, typing your name into the the little search thing to make sure I could find the link to this Zoom. Your email from, I guess it was 2021, came up on September 11th, 2021, 10 years after, just kind of, no, I'm sorry, 2011. 2011,
Yeah.
checking on me and just reading, what you wrote and my response. Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of odd that we've experienced all of these things together. And I will also say that, I was very kind of socially anxious on semester at sea. I had a very small circle. I was never at the bar. I didn't, do that. I was friends with a lot of the Caribbean crew members more than I was a lot of the students. As you mentioned, I was really into reggae and loved talking to those guys about Jamaica or St. Vincent, some of the places they were from, and music. And so anyway, my circle of students that I became friends with was pretty small. So I think it's even cooler that you were one of those. And then we ended up, it wasn't, one of the other 490 students that I happened to walk into the office and see.
Yeah. Well, that pleasure and joy was mine. So I'm glad that we have these shared experiences. Anyway, with that, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with me. And it's really great to relive most of these memories, but frankly, all of them. And I appreciate you opening up and making time.
Thanks, Alex. It was great speaking to you too.
Thanks for checking out this edition of Voyage of Rediscovery. And don't forget to also check out sas25th.com. That's SAS25th.com for everything fall 1998. We'll see you next time. And remember, if you're not back by 8 p.m., the ship will leave without you.